Hello and welcome back to the Red Pill. Today I'm going to be talking about our wonderful country that we live in, Australia. Home to many great things like the kangaroo, lamingtons, Vegemite. Some people might not agree. But today I'm going to talk about how our country is actually in trouble. It's not in the way you think. It's because of our politicians, corrupt politicians. Australia could be a rich country, but our politicians don't want that. And we have so many natural resources in our country, but we don't use it. Half the time we sell it off to other countries, like the US or China, which those countries are going to stab us in the back one day. It's time that we talk about how some of our politicians shouldn't even be in, like Scott Morrison. He abandoned us during the worst bushfire season. And he went to Hawaii. Like, why? When his own country was burning. Because our politicians like to run when there's problems. They want to hide behind a mask so they don't have to deal with it. This year, the floods. Another problem that Australia has, and it happens that hardly anything's been done. So, why? He got elected and has done nothing to help our country. He's willing to help Ukraine, though. Well, they're at war. Send medical and missiles and stuff, but then when it comes to Australia, we have nothing to defend ourselves with. If China decided to invade one day, we have nothing to defend us. But they're more than happy to help Ukraine, but not their own country. It's time that we stand up and fight for our country and vote in politicians that will do our thing. Like with UAP will actually help Australia. Not the Liberals, not Labor. UAP. They should be the ones we're voting in. Because they're the ones against all these vaccine mandates. Against all these dumb COVID rules. Yes, it might stop the spread of COVID. But is COVID a really big problem? No, it's not. All it is they've continued to use it to scare us. And to use excuses to mandate vaccines. You know why the COVID vaccine's mandatory and shit to get into places? Because no one was getting the flu vaccine anymore. So what did the pharmaceutical company do? They created another problem. And it happens that these biolabs that create diseases so they can do research could turn out to be diseases that could be used in bioweapons to kill us. So why would we fund research into biolabs? Australia will be a wonderful country, and it is. But it's time we voted out these moron politicians like Daniel Andrews, Scott Morrison. They don't care about the people. All they care about is filling their pockets with money instead of helping when there is a problem and running away from it. It's time we began to realize that we need to learn more about our politicians instead of keeping up to date with the Kardashians in the news. We should be researching our politicians. It's our election year this year. How many of you would actually do research on their politicians? Would you rather keep up to date on your politicians and what they're doing? Or keep up to date on like the Kardashians? Everyone will say keep up to date with the Kardashians. Everyone's more than happy to talk about world problems, but when it comes to Australia, no one wants to talk about them. We need to fix our country and start relying on the world and paying so much attention to the world when we should be focusing on our own country. It doesn't help our media is full of crap like usual. We should be mainly focusing on Australia and not the world. Because that's where we live. We don't live in the United States. We don't live in China. We don't live in Pakistan or any other place. We live in Australia. So we should be paying attention to what's happening in Australia and stop worrying about the rest of the world. We should also leave the British monarchy and actually sign a Bill of Rights, like what the Americans did. Because we currently, if Britain went to war, Russia, we would, by law, and because we're an ally of them, have to go and help them. But if we were able to have a Bill of Rights, we would be able to say, nah, we won't stay neutral, we don't want to get involved. Because if we got involved in a war with America and Britain and stuff, we're a bigger target because of our natural resources. So rest of these bigger countries like China and Russia want them. So while we're fighting the war, they will take over and invade Australia. We have nothing to defend ourselves. We're like an open target. And our politicians know this. So when China decides to invade, our politicians would just happen to disappear because they're under China's payroll. Will you defend yourself if China invaded? I know I will, because I'm not letting that country ruin what Australia stands for. We're multicultural, we have a lot of cultural, and if China took over, most of us would be put into re-education camps. All the red flaggers would be arrested. Everyone who disagrees with what China's doing would disappear. But it happened our politicians disappeared when they invaded, so we were on our own. It's time to stand up and fight for our country and do whatever we can for when the time comes and China does decide to invade, or any other country decides to invade. Because I'm not willing to give up. This is our country, and we should fight for it. We should be allowed to protest when we disagree with something. We live in a democracy, so that's what. And not be hit by sonic weapons used by our government. It's time to fight. And when the time comes to fight, it's time to fight. Because I want this country to be free. This country, we have the right to be free. To make our own choices. And not controlled. We should be able to do what is right in our own world. And not fear consequences from other countries. It's time to wake up, stand up, and realize that we don't have it as good as what countries think we do. The UN, they're just monsters. This country can be wonderful. It can be made great. To have a Bill of Rights, and we need to move away from the UK and America, because they're the ones that are going to drag us into war. We should be able to decide if we want to join a war or not. What happened to the submarines they promised us? They still haven't shown up yet. The AUKUS still. Did you know that in Australia we're not allowed anything like nuclear power? But this still is now going to change that. So do you know what that means? That now we're going to be allowed to have nuclear reactors and nuclear subs? So then America's going to decide, well, they're allowed to have nuclear subs and stuff. So we're going to build nuclear silos on Australia. And NATO's going to use that. The reason why Russia's invading Ukraine is because Ukraine's trying to join NATO, and Russia sees that as a threat. Because when they join NATO, they're going to be able to build nuclear silos right on Russia's border. And Russia doesn't want that. So they're invading Ukraine. I don't agree with it, but they have the right to protect their country if they see it as a threat. And what I've heard from in Ukraine is not good. Russia is destroying biolabs that are funded by Hunter Biden, and their crime families are being destroyed. America is involved in these biolabs. They were making deadlier versions of anthrax. It's time to wake up, stop believing what the media is saying, and fight. Please like and subscribe, and please join this fight. May the truth be with you.